Hey guys, my name is Kim, and for my English project, I had to interview a couple different people about immigration. And as I was reading their answers, I noticed that they were so honest and open, and so it motivated me to write this poem about them, telling their stories and honoring their experiences. So this poem is titled American Dreams. It's always moving, the goal, always coming with new demands and, of course, new requirements. They call this the melting pot, but they don't tell you how the melting pot burns the very best parts out of you. Maria and Roberto tell me how they don't regret coming here and that they will always remember their countries, never dusting the sand off their backs, the sweat off their foreheads, the calluses off their hands. They came here with a prayer in their pocket, the cross necklace they've had since they were baptized hanging from their necks, remembering what tortillas hechas a mano taste like, remembering how pozole swaggers in their mouth, the tamales covered in their blankets of corn husk. For Maria, this migration includes walking through deserts for so long her toenails get stuck in her socks as she pulls them off. Maria, so eager to arrive, does not yet realize that some borders cannot be crossed physically and are hungry to rip more than her toenails, but their own home has given them no other option. Maria and Roberto have spent the last 15 years here. This has become their new home. Unfortunately, it is one that can only offer just a little more than they are used to. But that will suffice, because for them, the American dream is not a white picket fence, but the satisfaction of paying rent. This home is much like a haunted house, a corn maze, having them run into obstacles while everyone else has a map of the way out. But that does not stop them from providing all that they can, working long hours, becoming slaves of capitalism. Maria and Roberto have waited too long, worked too hard, sacrificed too much to be living in a country with no future. Mr. President, can you not listen? For Ana, the native-born daughter of Bosnian immigrants, living in the United States means living with the feeling of having to suppress her culture, having to silence her religion post 9/11, because Allah forgives that she speaks the language she knows best. Yes, this poem is for the girl from the school bus who at the age of 12 so deliberately asked if Ana and her cousin were terrorists. Ana, zalmi jau, jami ataye jedno, delo od tuaye, destin sto, morala biti, usajano dog, siglanakak tsutaye, roditaye seborele. We both know now that it was all for us. I'm sorry English is not enough for you, and it will never fill you up. On a drunken night, when you forget that your parents secretly still want you to go to law school, when you forget that for some reason you've started celebrating Halloween and Thanksgiving, when you forget that pressure to conform your heritage, rejoice your voice. Let Bosnian decorate your core and gratify your hunger. Tell them you are not afraid anymore, that you will sing because what's inside of you is more than they can handle, more than you can handle, because Bosnia never left you. When I was in 5th grade, my mom decided it was time for a better education for my sister and I. Jacksonville Middle School didn't have the best reputation. At the age of 12, I had to go up against the Onslow County Board of Education to translate my mother's statement regarding her reasoning why we should be granted permission to go out of district. The face of a 12-year-old fighting for an opportunity must have struck someone's core. We were authorized access, but the story doesn't end there. My sister and I had to take a 2-week special orientation class that felt like part of the No Child Left Behind program. But you can't teach us what No Child Left Behind means when I've had to spend my whole life watching my dad wake up at sunrise to go to the same labor-intensive job since he was 23. Do you know what that does to a man? You can't teach me what No Child Left Behind means when I've had to sit there and watch as the white boy that doesn't know the similarities between Ellis Island and El Rio Grande calls my brother a beaner. You can't teach me what No Child Left Behind means when I've grown up with that uneasy feeling of having to laugh off the fact that white people can't pronounce my name correctly. You can't teach me what No Child Left Behind means when my mother asked me to stop speaking Spanish with her in public so we don't attract attention, ashamed of her own language, the same language that swarms her body with soul as she sings her favorite Juan Gabriel song. She is embarrassed, but I, more loudly than before, speak the language that I fell in love with, the language that overflows my abuela's stories, the language that taught me who I am, because, Madre, can't you see, I've waited too long to stay quiet, I've waited too long to continue being scared, I've waited too long to let my voice rejoice, I've waited too long to tell them that my last name isn't pronounced Fierro, it's Fierro.
Hey guys, so this is the second part of my video where I will go over the immigration questions that I asked. So for the first part, for the first question I asked, according to a study, Leslie J. argues that the age in which you migrate to the United States is a huge impact on how your life is here. Do you think that's true? And have you ever felt like your life was different from immigrants that migrate at a different age than yourself? And we have a couple different answers here. So the first one, all of them pretty much say that yes, there is a difference in what age you come in, and it's easier whenever you're younger because you have more opportunities. You are able to dive into school and the language easier, and we see that all throughout the the answers here, except for there's one from Maria where she said that she just came here to work, and that's what she did. Everyone comes here to work, so yeah. This one, there's one in particular that really got my attention. Charles is here in the United States. He came whenever he was 8 years old, and he feels that since he moved here at such a young age, it was more accepting to adapt to a whole new culture and society compared to other immigrants who came to the United States at a much older age. And he thinks that you adapt rather quickly because you're younger. So, and Roberto told us that whenever you're older, it's harder to learn English, and you just have to work because you have more responsibilities than the younger people. So for the second question, I asked if do you feel that your documentation status, race, and ethnicity have a say in what kind of neighborhood you live in, and have you ever felt like these things have been obstacles in your path to find a home, or for you or for your family? And we have a different couple answers here again, and Maria told us that she doesn't think that it has affected her because it didn't affect her because of her ethnicity, but it was because that she didn't study English. So I feel like we have a little of like blaming ourselves here kind of thing. And then the rest of the answers, like the second one asked, I asked what jobs were you able to get, and this is Roberto's answer. He feels that like a lot of the restaurants aren't welcoming to immigrants, so they won't hire you. So that affects where you can work, at least for him. Omar told us that he lives in a acceptable, tight-knit community, and he acknowledged that, that he lived in a southern community where there was racism and discrimination. So he knew that was happening, but it didn't really happen to him, but he knew that it was there, and there was a opportunity for that to happen. Charles, he lived in Northern Virginia, Washington, and he said that the neighborhood in which he lived in was mostly Hispanic and Asian immigrants. And as a child, he didn't really think much of it, but looking back now, he said that he lived in lower-priced homes compared to other people in, the other areas. And even though it wasn't a dangerous neighborhood, I could tell that it was different from the other neighborhoods. So, the next one I asked, do you believe that the area in which you live in grew up in had an effect on your education? Roberto tells us that he tried to study to be an electrician, but he couldn't get into school because he didn't have any papers. So for him, it did affect him a lot. Charles, this is Anna, she said that the only thing that she can think of is that her school lacked a fair amount of diversity, and she felt like, she had to suppress her culture. Even though, her peers thought that it was cool that she wasn't from America, but that she still felt that pressure to conform. Charles, now he grows up in Eastern North Carolina, which, again, is mostly white or African American, just depending on where. But he says that, as an Asian student, he definitely stood out in all his classes. So, and for Cedric, he said it's interesting because he went to charter school, so, it's a lottery to get in. So it was pretty small and it was more student focused, but he doesn't know exactly how he got in. So, for the multi-generation punishment question, I know that we only see the two answers here, and they're very short, but there is a story to this. So these two answers come from Maria and Roberto, which I had to do their interviews in the middle of work because they simply had no other time to do it. So we were literally in the middle of our shifts doing this. And so there's not a lot of time, to go really in depth in these questions. But as soon as I explained to them what multi-generation punishment was, they completely, just like agreed with me, and they were like, yeah, like, it totally affects everyone in your family. And whenever Roberto told me that, that it affects his kids especially, I could just hear in his voice how sad it was for him. You could just hear how just disappointed he was that, he can't even, this isn't just about him, this is also affecting his kids, and there's nothing he can do about it. So for the next question, I said, would you say that this fear, referring to the multi-generational punishment, has changes how you interact with society and living in North Carolina, and how does it influence that? So we just have this one answer here that is from Roberto, and he says that there is fear there, and you're always insecure, like the checkpoints. So, like for him, he can't travel far places, because he's afraid that there will be a checkpoint, and he doesn't have a driver's license, so it's not easy for him to to travel or to go out of the state, or so it definitely affects how he interacts with society and how he lives. For the next question, I asked, do you think that because your parents' documentation status, that sometimes they can't provide for you as much as they would like to? And again, we have Roberto's answer here, where he said, yeah, there's no way I can help them. There's no help. And again, whenever I interview him, I can just hear, how sad he was that he can't help his kids, even though he wants to so much. There's nothing he can do. There's no help for him. There's no help for his kids. So next question, I asked, would you agree that living in the United States has altered your culture and even Americanized it? And for example, do you see a change in the way you dress or in the music that you listen to? And we have a lot of different answers here, but they all pretty much say the same thing, that living in the United States has definitely altered their culture, and it's Americanized it. Maria is the only one that actually stood out. She tells me that she doesn't feel like her culture has changed because she didn't learn English. So whenever she got here, she just got jobs. And her husband have just dedicated their lives to that. So that's the only one that was different. But again, everyone, Cedric tells us that, because now he barely speaks French and he doesn't want to lose it, but he doesn't even listen to Haitian music anymore. And even though he tries to get back at it, sometimes it just doesn't work. The only thing that he remembers now is just the food, because his mom still cooks it. So, but Charles, he's still fluent in both English and his native tongue, because, he still speaks up with his family. So, that's good. And Omar tells us that the type of music that he listens to is not at all close to the type of music his parents listen to. And he definitely feels that he's been Americanized, especially whenever he's surrounded by other people of Mexican culture. So that was interesting. For the last part, I said, growing up, were you aware of your parents' struggles and how much they had done for you in order for you to have a better life? And if so, did you feel pressure to have good grades in school? And what other societal pressures do you feel you must maintain in relation to the struggles of your parents? And there's one in particular here that I really liked, and I incorporated this part into the poem a lot. This is Anna's answer when she says, I was absolutely aware of my parents' struggles and how much they did for my sister and I to make sure that we got the best life that we could. I grew up with my parents telling me that if I wanted to be successful, I would have to work hard, and if I did, I could do anything. There was definitely a pressure to maintain good grades in school, and I was always pushed to be an A student. B's did not fly. That being said, I always felt more stressed than my other friends at school, and even still in college, to perform better and to get top grades. I always feel like I have to be the best in class or at my job and work hard, because my parents did not come to America for me to slack off and do poorly. That last part, I feel like it's really interesting, and it really stands out, because she knows that her parents gave up everything and left, her country to come to be here for a better life, and to give her a better life. And she knows that, and she feels like she can't slack off because her parents have done so much more for her. So that is the end of the slideshow. So thank you.